You are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Welcome, movie lovers and theology nerds, to episode 377 of Popcorn Theology, where we examine films for where they align with the greatest story and our greatest storyteller, discussing what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful movie consumption. I'm Eric.
I'm Miles.
And I'm a masked vigilante.
We'll let him in here. It's not illegal on this side of the world so far. But as everyone knows, our lovely host James Harleman is here with us as well. So we are looking at the full season of Daredevil Born Again, and it's starring Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio, really the only characters you care about in this show.
Wait a minute.
It is featuring the other two characters you care about, Deborah Ann Wall and John Bernthal.
Sure.
Other than that, it's pretty much, I mean, since Foggy died in the first episode in the first 5 minutes, so that is not a spoiler.
Started off with a bang.
Yeah, started with a bang. I would add his character, but unfortunately, he's only in the first 5 minutes of the first episode.
But wait! What about Vanessa?
Actually,
she's not bad. I just don't care.
she's also, oh man, Superman's mom. Why can't I think? I can think of Jor-El.
Oh, I don't see
Laura.
Oh, Laura. A normal name.
There you go.
Who would have thought for an alien? Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about some spoiler-free thoughts, particularly for the full season that we've just watched. And I'll start. I have to go. I guess it's fresh. Like, okay, yeah, it was good enough, but like it's nowhere near as good as the OG series. Like, it's one of those things. Like, if it was its own thing, if it wasn't called Daredevil, it was just called Masked Vigilante, we'd be like, hey, this is a pretty good show. It reminds me a lot of Daredevil. But
it's like they're trying.
It's like, oh, there's someone's trying to rip off Daredevil. Good for them, you know. But it's just not there. It's like getting a steak from Outback, Outback Steakhouse, at like 2 days, 3 days after you just had a really good ribeye at like a 5-star restaurant. You're like, yeah, it's a steak. I mean, yeah, but
it's a steak, mate.
Yeah, it's like, but you know what it should be.
But
it
wasn't a mistake. It was,
yeah,
it's a steak.
Exactly. So
Nice.
I'd say overall enjoyable. If you haven't ever seen the OG series, then I think this would be passable. Like if this was the first entry into it, you'd be like, okay, yeah, I'll keep watching. But if you haven't seen the OG series, go back and watch that. Be a great palate cleanser. You almost have to view this as standalone. It's way too many. It's too disjointed, honestly, for I'd say it's one cohesive story from episode 1 to episode 9. It's too much disjointedness. And it doesn't do the OG series characters justice, particularly Foggy. I still am like, come on, let's get some real good closure with this. Unfortunately, episode 9, it wasn't the icing on the cake at the end of the day. Like I said, I'm going with fresh. There's a lot of things to complain about, and we'll try not to complain the entire episode, but it was fresh. It's just a qualified fresh of just pretend this is not connected to the original series. So, Miles, how about yourself?
Yeah, you want to pretend it's not connected to the original series, but it's really dependent on you really liking the series. So that makes it's kind of tough. I'd say the series is still fresh as compared to butter and salted for the previous 3 seasons of the different show. I think Daredevil is my most rewatched show. There's just something about it that keeps me coming back. That's why it's buttered and salted. It's salty that you want to keep more of it. This one, I went back and watched a few scenes here and there, but I probably won't revisit the first season of Daredevil Born Again. I still love Daredevil. I love this take on him. The suit looked really great in this last episode in particular. It had some really high moments. The not CGI moments. Yeah. But I really do. With this, I feel the same way I did coming out of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, where there's some really, really awesome parts to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. But I left the theater angry because they only gave me half a story. This gave us like half or 2/3 of a story, and things didn't flow quite as well. Decisions didn't really follow from previous decisions. And so I liked so much of it. I really love these characters. I would have sat and binged this probably in 2 or 3 days. If they had released it all at once, I still would be hooked on it. But it just, it's fresh. It's some of the best superhero show, but bottom of the ranking compared to the 3 seasons of Netflix's Daredevil.
Yeah. How about yourself, James?
Well, I have my champagne toast, just like Fisk and Vanessa. I'm ready to toast a great finish to series. But the whole series was like, I mean, you look at an EKG or something, and it's you got it going up and down and up and down. And I really needed episode 9 to stick the landing, and it did not. It failed for me on multiple levels. So I can't join you on the fresh train. I am series stale because I'm in for season 2 because of Charlie, because of Vincent, because of Deborah, because of John Bernthal, and the DD brand, right? In episode 8, I described it as if the replacement showrunner was trying to make an omelet out of the disparate episode eggs. But ultimately, no, it felt like we hit episode 9 and it was actually a souffle and it collapsed. Like that's what it felt like to me. It just did not stand. Everything kind of depended on these last 2 for me to bring it home and raise it up and make it fresh. And boy, I actually was very optimistic heading into 9, and 9 just felt like deflated.
Yeah. I would agree. I wouldn't requalify my fresh, but I do agree. Like 9 honestly was probably the biggest letdown in the entire season.
I think it was because by the time you get to 9, there's all these plot threads being woven, and you're thinking, oh, what's going to come of this? How are they going to tie this bow up in the 9th episode? And they just decided kind of not to.
Yeah.
And then to go in some direction, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So as we all know, and listeners know, a film's theological talking points don't always correlate with its with its fresh or stale rating. So on the theology side, are we looking at diluted, carbonated, cup run over? James, what are you going with?
See, it was stale for me on the popcorn front, but I can't deny there's stuff to talk about because it's Daredevil, right? So it's definitely carbonated, some great ideas, but because I can't do, like you were saying, Eric, I even this season or this last episode opened up even referencing Nadim, a very deep cut from season 3. So it's like, I can't divorce this from the previous seasons. And honestly, it's carbonated, but a lot of the great ideas to talk about were things already explored in the previous seasons. Only a few things maybe that are unique. And I feel like the show itself doesn't flesh them out as well as it could. So I guess that's where we come in.
Yeah, I agree with you that one. Carbonated, but like, especially the strangely endearing relationship between Fisk and Vanessa. It's really funny for me to finish an episode going, wow, as a Christian, I'm actually kind of encouraged by their marriage. And I'm just feeling guilty about it immediately because they're murderous and manipulative. But I think the show, it brings up good ideas, largely from the previous season, but they miss some opportunities. Like, for example, I can only think of 1 or 2 scenes that actually involved his Catholic faith, listening to a sermon or anything, and there was no priest in it.
Yeah.
And those were some of my favorite scenes, is when he's having some hard-nosed conversations with, maybe not a completely orthodox priest in each conversation, but that was stuff I was looking for that I really liked from the previous seasons. And so it was carbonated, but not as tasty as it could have been. It could have been a real tasty drink, and it didn't seem to want to land any of its ideas that it was playing with. So good for us to talk about, but it didn't really take a stand on any of the theological topics that I think are interesting.
Yeah. No, I agree on the carbonated part. And Miles, you're right. It's something we talked about before is like people say, oh, Hollywood's out of ideas. It's like Hollywood's not out of ideas. They're recycling the same stories. They're doing all that. They even come up with new ideas. What they've lost the ability to do is land the plane. Like they can't flesh out a story. And so it looks like they're out of ideas and they can't tell stories. No, they don't know how to finish stories. And I think this is a perfect example of it. Is like you can have, I mean, think about like when we used to have 24 episode season shows. Like you had a lot of room to have a lot of crappy episodes, but as long as episodes 1 to 3 were good and episodes 10 to 13 were good, and then the last 3 were good, no one cared. So it was like in the in-between episodes, fine, but you had to land the plane. You had to stick the landing, and it didn't.
And you can have a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with a cliffhanger, but a season has to have some kind of climax, and it has to close some doors, and then leave that cliffhanger. But yeah, this one just sort of fizzled.
Yeah, it's like which of the problems were resolved? Any of the 4 or 5 plot lines that were going, which of them were resolved at the end of the show? I can't really think of any.
We solved the problem of Matt's crappy apartment, but we'll get to that later.
Some remodeling.
So, like I had said, carbonated. I'm not going to actually rehash almost any of the things I've been speaking about for the last, I think, 6 weeks. That has been. So it's like a lot of the themes are just repeat. You want to have a deeper dive, go and listen to the last 6 episodes. So there's definitely things to discuss, but everything is it's all just on the surface. Nothing gets too deep. It's a Skinwalker version of Daredevil, where it's like, hey, Daredevil's Catholic, right? Yeah, cool. But we don't know what a priest would actually sound like, and apparently they couldn't get his mom to play the.
But I'll tell you, there's a couple of moments where you see some headlights appear, and you've got Frank Castle and Daredevil standing in the streets of a New York that's falling apart, and there is parts where you just go, yes. If you kind of forget some of the
you forget some of the other stuff. So well, before we continue, we're going to go ahead and drop some ads, but before we do, we want to make sure you like, subscribe, and comment here on YouTube. It really helps with the algorithm, especially with the commenting and liking in the comment section, and we will reply to you. So if you think we're off base with it, go ahead and comment. Someone commented just yesterday on one of the previous episodes, and I was able to start some dialogue with them. So comment, help out the algorithm. We're here for that. Share the episode with your friends and keep the conversation going. And then head over to Patreon to support us financially. We just covered the Patreon pick episode Sicario. I covered that with Rory. So
nice.
bringing in Emily Blunt to play an American FBI agent. I brought in our resident Brit to come and play
nice.
play a podcaster with us. So it was a lot of fun. So with that, let's go ahead and have a word from our sponsors.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane!
Cinemagog, The Marvelous Era. James Harleman here, the cinema guy, announcing the sequel to my first book on film and faith. Let's face it, entertainment has changed dramatically since the first book published in 2012, and comic book characters and franchises are everywhere. So I decided to set my sights on superheroes and examine the evolution of Hollywood in this follow-up to the first Cinemagog book. For example, what does Loki tell us about culture's view of God? Why does the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Infinity Saga continually align with biblical themes? In the Marvelous Era, I review each film and show not only how the individual movies express gospel parallels, but each phase essentially reveals a multi-point sermon. I also explore DC, Star Wars, the Monsterverse, and more. Without compromising scriptural truth, we can sift these stories and discover how we might reject, receive, and redeem ideas for personal reflection and Christian conversation. Also, has Hollywood's messaging gotten worse? The book explores ways these marvelous mythologies correspond with conversion, Christian living, church history, and Reformation, but I do also highlight what has been the entertainment industry's darker, indoctrinating decade, as well as toxic fandom and the dangers of immersion in pop culture that just might drown us spiritually if we're not careful. So suit up, assemble, and join me on a journey to the Infinity Saga and beyond. Cinemagogue, the Marvel Us Era. Now available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle editions. Hey, this is James, and if you're listening to Popcorn Theology, it's because you're interested in movies, or theology, or best of all, both. And that probably means you're our kind of people, sharing things in common with our community and maybe sharing common interests our listeners and viewers would be interested in as well. So why not partner with us and advertise your business or ministry right here on Popcorn Theology? We're looking for great, like-minded sponsors and offer reasonable rates with a variety of formats to get your message out. Remember, our fans aren't mindless consumers, so they'll give you thoughtful consideration. That's big part of what we're all about. So for more information on advertising with us, contact info@popcorntheology.com.
And we're back, dropping the spoiler warning as we dig deeper into Daredevil Born Again. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do a quick plot summary for episode 9. A lot of our talking points they're going to be all over the place throughout the entire season. But for the most part, I want to make sure we do a quick recap for episode 9 in particular. And our popcorn thoughts on this part will be a little bit more towards episode 9. So, Miles, why don't you go ahead and give us a plot summary for episode 9?
Yeah, let's do it. So it's been nice going through these episodes one at a time, looking at, well, like their titles. Like I remember In the Hollow of His Hand, we got a lot of mileage out of that. Episode 9 is titled Straight to Hell. And basically what happens in this episode is Fisk leads the city straight to hell. And so he's in the last episode, Matt Murdock dove in front of a bullet in order to save Fisk, this heroic moment. And now we have all these plot points in play where Matt is in the hospital and Fisk has kind of what he needs in order to get the public to allow him to be extreme. So he unleashes a task force with no body cams, no oversight to go make a war on vigilantes in the street. And then Fisk causes a blackout for some reason, but he's leveraging.
The plot can happen.
So the plot can happen, but also it shows you that at least he's got control over these different sectors of the city, and he's leveraging public officials and getting rid of people who might oppose him in the government, all in this kind of like Night of Broken Glass kind of thing that he's doing. Meanwhile, Matt is in the hospital. He hears that Fisk has sent Buck after him. Matt escapes the hospital, goes to his apartment, and who's there but Frank Castle, the Punisher. He got a call from a friend, which is ends up surprisingly being the person you've wondered where she's been the whole season, Karen. But Frank Castle shows up. They kill a bunch of corrupt cops together. They debate a little bit about killing, and then the cops throw in a grenade and destroy what. Let's see, how are you describing that apartment, James?
So banal. It's just like they just found like the most dull place to film, and they're like, this is Matt's apartment in this season. Let's forget about the cool sets we've had in the old show.
As opposed to in the previous episodes where it's like they could do so much playful things because Matt doesn't care if there's light shining through the windows, so why not have giant windows with neon, all that kind of stuff. But I do really love the scene. I watched it, I think 3 times, is when they throw the grenade. And in the middle of an argument, Matt tells Frank to jump off the roof, and they're both jumping off the roof, and Matt uses his grappling hook, and they both slam down on a car on the streets, and just brutally beaten up. And then Karen shows up, and you've got the Punisher and Daredevil in the streets of New York together. It's just yes. And then you see after this, they kind of part ways. The Punisher and Daredevil, and Karen talks Matt out of doing like a suicide mission to go say, actually, well, once Punisher separates, he gets captured by a bunch of these corrupt cops who they try to recruit him, like, be one of us, lead us. And he looks at him and says, what do you, I hate all you guys. You know. So Matt wants to go rescue him, but Karen says, well, you know, you're shot and there's just one of you. Why don't you rally the city in order to oppose Fisk? And so finally, at the end of this show, you see Matt Murdock standing in a room with these other characters that you've come to know in previous seasons in this one, starting the
all 5 of them.
The hashtag resistance.
I like how he said that you've come to know. He stopped very short of like.
Yeah, you've come to know a few of them, like replacement Karen,
I recognize that,
and replacement cop who helps him out, and replacement friend.
Yeah.
But you could see what they're trying to do is kind of create a hashtag resistance, and that is your mid-season finale for the next 5 episodes that should be coming out in the next month, but are not until the next year. And so but episode 9, still that taste is just in all of our mouths, largely because, man, I was thinking this would be an excellent episode 7 or an excellent mid-season finale. Like, you're seeing it, the pieces are in place, but this is where we're left.
Yeah. Underwhelming at the end of the day. So James, how about going into the popcorn thoughts and thinking and stuff like that? We'll let you go first, man.
All right.
You were.
I'll try to drag you down to stay.
I was like, the first couple bites, you're like, "Ooh, this is kind of. It's got a little bit of taste," and then it's like the meme where it's like, no.
I'm going to try to drag you all down to Staletown. Now, the episode and season, I mean, it had moments that I liked. Of course, I liked seeing Frank and Red, fight together. The return of Karen, I've been hoping for that since episode 1. And I feel like the retooling seemed to be trying to give us scenes that we wanted. I want to see that scene. I want to see Frank and Matt doing stuff. I want to see that. But the show and ultimately then the whole season just did not cohere. All the things I liked in episode 8 just felt like they were brushed away in episode 9. There was no nuance to Matt taking the bullet. He literally, Kingpin, I was like, oh, how is Kingpin going to react emotionally to his enemy taking a bullet? Just kill him. How's he Matt? Why'd you do it? I don't know. Really? That's all we get?
Yeah.
They took the J.J. Abrams school of writing. It's like somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. or somehow he just knew about Vanessa. I know Vanessa. Yeah. They just that could have been a critical juncture for them, and they brushed that away. It just felt like, we did all this pivotal stuff in episode 8, but we're moving on. And it's like it felt like bad CW or maybe even old school comic book writing. I've seen some apologists. They're like, well, in the comics, in old 60s comics, characters monologue. Why is everybody in cages at the end? Why didn't they kill Frank? That's the bad, we won't kill you. We're going to save you and put you in this so that you can break out later and do that thing. Or we'll leave you with, this thing's going to crush you slowly, but we'll walk away and we'll watch it happen. That's what it felt like was happening. And the benefits, all of it taking place in a day.
Yeah.
I was like, how ridiculous was that? He's like, we're going to shut the city down. We're going to do it. I'll declare martial law. That would never happen. To wind the city up. Kat and I were talking afterwards. Like, why didn't they just say it had been a week? Then Heather wouldn't look like an idiot for taking the job 24 hours later.
Yeah.
Matt would have actually been able to grab the Punisher and swing off that building instead of having just had a bullet through his shoulder the night before.
Yeah.
Have him be in a coma for a week, and you could have said there have been riots all week. Now there could be a martial law. It all felt weird and rushed, and it's like a poor man's Dark Knight Rises.
And so often, I don't even really like that one very much.
And an 8 p.m. curfew in New York City, that cuts the economy in half. That would never happen. Also, I looked it up. A mayor can't declare martial law. They're acting like there's no such thing as state governors. Those are the only ones who can declare martial law, or the federal government. So even the whole premise is absurd. And as much as I loved seeing the Punisher fights and things, the bad CGI blood splashes just looked so fake. It's that idea just are humans just like balloons waiting to pop? And Fisk crushed a guy's. I get if he crushes a guy's head in a door in season 1 of the original show, but he rips a guy's face apart like he's Freddy Krueger. Like what? That's not. it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, and you could have had him. The one thing, it's the missed opportunities. You could have had him force everybody else in that room to kill the cop,
right?
That kind of thing, because that's the type of thing that he would do. I mean, of course,
or have him kill him with human strength,
yeah,
like some kind of
choke him, stab him,
break his back. Do that. And why would Punisher, who at the end of his last season shows up like he has even down in his basement, he has like guns galore. He just walks into the base with a pistol.
Yeah.
And why? So the plot could happen? So he could get caught, but then he gets out at the end after the after credits scene because he's going to now have a special presentation on Disney Plus. So, so then what was the point of all that? It just felt like the whole thing limped along. And then I'm like, am I supposed to be excited by this team? Yay, that cop I met in one episode, and Cherry, who's done nothing except kind of talked him out a couple times. Like if they'd had Jessica Jones or Luke Cage, or like if they'd had anything to sort of spice it up, there was just, for me, it just felt hollow in a way. It's just like the same team that I cannot believe that it's the same team that did episode 8, did episode 9, because it felt like they got the creators of Riverdale to come up with an episode of Daredevil.
Yeah,
from the way the plot went, and I just just kind of soured the whole. As much as I've tried to be up and down. Like, the middle episodes kind of stunk, but this just really tore it down for me. So yeah, there you go. No holds barred.
So James, did you enjoy yourself?
No, we kind of sat there at the end of the episode and just kind of didn't say much. Yeah. It's like, what, why? It's just like it all just. Yeah, I liked you. I mean, you kind of nailed it earlier, Eric. It just felt like the episode moved along so the plot could happen without good reasons.
Yeah, non sequiturs all over the place. These things do not follow. That was just okay.
And Fisk in season 3 of the old show was a great speech maker. Mm-hmm. Like he came out down. I remember him coming down and he'd be before the press. They have him like film on a webcam in his office, and he's just like, "I'm declaring martial law, and I love New York." But there's so much better ways they could have written those scenes that it just felt weak. But I digress. Go on, Miles.
No, I mean, but there's some things about it. So
Miles, your turn.
So I'd say the show's still pretty fresh, but I too am disappointed with episode 9. If this had been episode 6 or 7, it might have been one of my favorite episodes. If a few of the things were out, because it's awesome building. Okay, you've got teams in place, and we're ready to see what happens now that Fisk, his plot is starting to be revealed. I like the fact that at this point, Fisk is doing a lot of what made season 3 so great was the way in which Fisk manipulated, like, just people who were just a little bit morally compromised. He would get them to do way more evil than they ever planned, and he's able to intimidate the weak and corrupt the corruptible and get rid of the incorruptible good guys. Like we've had this discussion a little bit. I like Daniel Blake, the like intern who's become deputy mayor, and
yeah, my least favorite character is Miles' favorite. There we go.
He's my favorite new character. Yeah, I think it's interesting to see him go with. So he's a guy who's not clearly super talented, but very ambitious and loyal. And how far will that get you on the coattails of an evil, powerful guy? And you see him talking to the city council and saying, "Oh, well, you don't like what we're doing, but look at this. I've looked into your closet and seen all these skeletons. What do you want to do about it? Let me know what you want to do." And they're like, "That's cool. It's got a taste of Wesley from the previous season."
Bargain basement Wesley. No, I will give you him in the last couple of episodes. They've actually written him to be competent. I grew to dislike him through the first half. I will give you, they've made him a competent character working for Kingpin here the last episode or two.
He's a likable.
It must be my Gen Z bias. There you go. I confess.
But it's been fun to go episode by episode and actually sit with this show, because episode 9 might be the only thing that somebody keeps in their minds. But I have some fond memories from going through some of these episodes detailed. But it is the pacing issues where some things felt way too fast and other things felt way too slow. Mm-hmm. Just like Muse would have been useful to have around,
Yeah,
but
much. Yeah,
and the
wasted potential.
Yeah. And this is
Well, they keep talking about all of these, like, oh, vigilantism's gone, it's crazy. Like, how many are there? It's like White Tiger and Daredevil. And
what about the swordsman guy? That's an interesting Bruce Wayne kind of guy.
that they've barely focused on. Yeah.
So how much fun would it have been to see scenes of Fisk's task force taking down different vigilantes? That would have been, why not throw that in there? That would have been cool. I think this season, if it had been 12 episodes and they had actually progressed these stories a little bit more or shortened the other episodes, would have been pretty good for me. And then I think you probably should have called this season Kingpin Born Again, because Daredevil doesn't really make any conclusions about his own life. He says, when he puts on the suit again, he says, F it. Oh, yeah. Thanks for telling the audience his moral wrestling. But he just goes, oh, yeah. It could have been somebody needs to do something, right? What about that feeling? Does that connect with you, audience? Yeah. Not just, F it, I guess I'll be a superhero. But Fisk, you see, he's been building this plot this whole time where you have Wilson and Vanessa's loyalty and their intense relationship going back and forth. And then finally you see at the end of the season, they have this plot to create this free port, which I don't even sure is a real thing.
He's been playing 4D chess this entire
4D
time.
chess.
Maybe even 5D chess.
5D chess. And he got the girl. So he got the girl. He's got his mission. He's assembled his team. And Fisk, Born Again. Because he's the one who really progressed through the show. And here's another thing that's just, it's borderline theology point. Is this Daredevil, the whole show is struggling with the fact that he wanted to kill Poindexter and tried, right? And so he's really concerned about the sin of murder. What about the other sins? This dude fornicates in every season, right? And he overdrinks, and sometimes he's proud, and he's definitely got anger, which includes, wrath and murder. But it's only the one struggle. We'd be like, boy, you've got some other things to deal with. But
wait, God gave one commandment, right?
One commandment.
Just one. Yeah, there's just one.
Don't kill any bad guys with a name.
Absolutely. So if we're talking about just episode 9, James, I agree with you. It's stale. It is stale. I didn't put particulars on this. It's like I enjoyed seeing the characters. Like overall, like I said, I think the season overall was fresh because it was enjoyable. It was watchable. Like watching, like it's still some of the better TV that's been made in a while. Because most TV is just crap nowadays. So again, it's by comparisons, stuff like that. It's like, don't be happy with being served crap, but if it's better crap than other crap, then accept it. So 10 years ago, I would not have said this was fresh. I would have said it's stale. But again, we're in a different time. So I'm glad to see some of these characters. I'm glad they're back. But I also wish the OG creators and writers were back too. Turns out they're the real MVPs of this entire thing. Mm-hmm. Everything seems disconnected, and I'm not satisfied with how it ended. I did not care for Matt's speech at all. It sounded like it was written by someone trying to write the closing of a show. It was not natural. It was not anything that would motivate anyone
or memorable. It's not memorable.
It's not memorable. It's the only line was fear without a city without fear. It's like what does that even mean? I know what they're playing on, but it doesn't mean anything. It's just bad writing. And there's too much. I say it this way: it's like there's too much real world politics coming in, but without any subtlety. Like
what? What do you mean, Eric?
It's like I can take real world politics, but like do it subtle. Like don't make it like don't basically. It's like I wouldn't have been surprised if they had just at one point said the Kingpin is trying to trump everyone.
He's played his trump card.
I'm going to make this city great again.
Yes, absolutely, yes. So I liked seeing Frank Castle back and doing his thing. It's fun because I get to live vicariously through his vengeance. So it's one of those. It's something.
As do we all.
Something Rory and I actually talked about on this Sicario episode. is watching those guys commit illegal acts, but for sometimes a righteous cause.
Yeah. Well, like if you take
it gets the manhood in you, and you're like, yeah, I want to do that, but I'm also a Christian, so I'm just going to send you to prison.
like a movie I really liked was the Thomas Jane Punisher movie. If you we haven't covered that, but what that movie basically is, he doesn't punish bad guys. It's vengeance. It's a revenge tale.
Yeah.
And it's very cathartic to watch. Right. But it's only at the very end that he's like starts to even think about things outside of getting revenge on the people who harmed him. But it's still secretly, it feels pretty good to watch him get revenge on John Travolta in that movie.
Yeah. All right. So let's move into our theology section.
Well, let's take a drink.
Oh yeah. That means it's time to pour and sample the more spiritual aspects of this film and its narrative. So let's shift some gears and discuss the themes of Daredevil Born Again. And I'll just let everyone know on this one is this episode for me in particular was I was not thrilled to cover it. I actually did watch it twice today, and I couldn't really think of too much to actually say. So this episode for me was very, very, very shallow. But this is the great thing about having brothers in Christ is James and Miles both found some they both found some good stuff. So I'm actually going to not have a main point myself. I'm just going to be bouncing off some ideas. But Miles, why don't you go ahead and get a start?
I'll take your main point.
Yeah.
Look, what I do like about this show is good, especially superhero shows that are trying to be gritty, capture a concept early in the Old Testament, basically of the time of the judges. I think the good Batman comics cover this and Batman movies cover this, where the time of the judges is a time in which God's people haven't fully embraced his promises. They don't fully obey him. And they go through this cycle of idolatry, and then they are oppressed, and then they cry out for God for a hero. He raises up a hero who is often, most of the time, morally bankrupt themselves in some significant way. But there's rescue, a time of peace, and then they cycle back into their idolatry and sin, which brings oppression again. And this is captured very well in this phrase, everyone did what was right in his own eyes. You find it in Judges 17, 18, 19, and it's the concluding line of the book. And so you see, like, think about the closest thing to a superhero you get in the Bible is Samson. And Samson is somebody whose vengeance motivates him, and he wins all these battles, but he's also a slave to his own desires. He's very fleshly. He doesn't have any friends or good counsel in the book. And ultimately, he's kind of a tragic character. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of my favorite superhero tales.
He also winds up his last act. He does blind. Just to
does
throw in a Daredevil.
Yes. We should do Samson and the Pillars with a Daredevil mask, right? Somebody should meme that. And so, what you have here is you have Fisk is bringing in the time of the judges in this season. Kind of like he almost did in season 3. He was doing a great job where he started in prison and ended up in a penthouse. Now he starts a broken man who's been shot by Echo. I think I didn't see that whole season. I stopped about midway through. A broken man who becomes, I think the episode description on Disney was Mayor Fisk becomes Mayor Kingpin. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And so you see that he brings in the time of the judges, a time of literal darkness and oppression. And it also reminds me of another good description of this kind of brokenness. You find in Isaiah chapter 1, where God is assessing, Jerusalem's supposed to be a beacon of light, a city on a hill. But instead, God's assessment is this. In Isaiah 1, 21 through 23 says this, how the faithful city has become a whore. She who was full of justice, righteousness lodged in her, but now murderers. Your silver has become dross, your best wine mixed with water. Your princes are rebels and companions of thieves. Everyone loves a bribe and runs after gifts. They do not bring justice to the fatherless, and the widow's cause does not come to them. you might add Nor to Hector Ayala's niece. That's this. And so you see that
Wow.
Fisk, really, this season for me is Fisk Born Again. And one of his plans, one thing that's actually kind of bothered me about Fisk in the previous seasons is it never really described what his motive was. It was always kind of hard for me to figure out. It's one reason why I keep going back to him. So what is this guy really after, except for Vanessa? But here he's basically agreed. I want to build my own Fisk nation in the Freeport on the edge of New York. I said, okay, I get that. And he does a good job of manipulating people, pressuring weak people, and eliminating the good people in the city. It's the time of the judges, reborn in New York.
Excellent. That's a good setup, Miles. And thanks for the synopsis there. So, James, let's go ahead and move on to move into your point and see what you were able to glean and redeem.
Well, I'm still not sure how that Freeport works, and especially if you do it as mayor and with city money, and yet it's not going to. I'm still not sure where they're going with that. I was trying to figure out
private funds. I don't know. It's all a bit complicated, but the important thing is that Fisk's company is secure. I don't know.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be contested, and they're keeping it secret. And I was trying to figure out, okay, wait, if you just have a secret warehouse that isn't at Freeport and nobody knows about it, and you're doing your bad stuff there, how is that? How is it better to technically have it be a Freeport, but you're keeping it a secret so nobody knows?
So it's yeah. So
I'm not quite sure I see the point yet. Maybe they'll flesh that out in season 2, but
yeah.
I mean, all money laundering has to get into the legal system some way. So if everyone knows that place, it basically it protects you from actual prosecution if your empire falls apart. But it's still, I mean, you're still going to get caught in money laundering at some point as soon as you turn into U.S. dollars.
But he's slippery. Yeah. He's slippery for a big guy.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see if they figure out a way to make that. I still wonder if that isn't them picking up pieces of trying to piece together a coherent story. I'm also trying to figure out how he's anti-vigilante, but he has all of his cops painting a vigilante symbol on their chest. I don't know. Anyways, but whatever. But the city's in chaos at the end. And Eric, you were right. I don't think it's the best speech in the world. But trying to dig up a gold nugget or at least some gold dust from this episode, Matt's closing speech was what I sort of zeroed in on, because he says, he says, I can't see my city, but I can feel it. The system isn't working. It's rotten, corrupt. But this is our city, not his. And we can take it back together, the weak, the strong, all of us. Resist, rebel, rebuild, because we are the city without fear. And so I was like, all right, when I think of a city without fear, what do I think of theologically? Whether not the best speech, maybe somebody just asked AI to write it, but the idea of being a city or calling yourself a city that's within the city, a special city or a subset of the city, it's like, well, that's popularized by St. Augustine, right? And a very Christian idea that the people of God being described as inhabiting or forming a spiritual city, often referred to as the city of God. That was Augustine's book, right? And distinguishing it from the city of man or the city of corruption, of earthly desires, earthly pursuits, the kind of things that Fisk is after. And so it's that contrast between the city of God and the city of man, and that choice between standing for spiritual priorities or earthly priorities. And obviously that finds its way into the Bible as well, right? I imagine as we move into season 2, their city without fear is going to be trying to make a stand against Fisk and to stand for something else and to be seen and hopefully inspire others. And just remind about that the people of God or the church are called a city in Matthew 5, right? You're the light of the world, Jesus says. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. And so you've got the Josie's is all papered up, but you've got that one piece exposed, and what do we see coming through there? It's like the symbol of Daredevil, and he's like, we need to be a city that stands for something different within this corrupt city that Fisk has done, and hopefully be, even as, spoiler alert, he gets a black suit. It's like they're going to try to be a light. They're going to be a symbol of something different. And being a city then without fear, or God's, if this idea of God's people biblically are a city or a city within the city, kind of like being God's people in Babylon with Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, like being that in the enemy's land, but being a separate city that stands for something different. It reminded me then even of being a city without fear. Well, Deuteronomy 31 speaks to that, right? God's people are encouraged to be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, those who are in the land, for it's the Lord who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. And jumping back to the New Testament then, Hebrews talks about, for here we have no lasting city, but we seek the city that is to come. So, of course, Christians aren't looking to redeem and have a perfect city here on earth, but we're trying to embody the city that is yet to come, like the kingdom yet to come. We're trying to be something different in the corrupt city, even as it may decay around us, even as it may fall. But the city without fear that represents the people of God are going to stand, whether it falls, whether the kingpin's in control, whether a good king is in control, no matter what the regime. There's sort of it's the city that will always stand because its foundation is on something different, something higher, something that Daredevil or Matt Murdock in previous seasons absolutely has relied on.
Yeah.
And so that was some of the stuff that stood out to me. It's just, okay, I can run with that end quote. I can turn a weak quote into a biblical idea.
Well, as you were talking, it was making me think of Matt's conversation with Karen about how him believing that he needed the mask essentially is the thing that kept him alive. But why he stopped being Daredevil a year ago was because the more and more he leaned into Daredevil, the more and more he stopped pulling his punches. The more he stopped doing this, it led up to that moment of him doing attempted murder. I would have said self-defense, but whatever. He's the lawyer.
Well, and he knows his own heart, so that's all you can take that as.
Yeah, exactly. But it still is one of those things where it's like, when we're in a collapsing city, when the mayor's declaring martial law, which he doesn't have the authority to do to begin with, but he's still doing it. When he's doing that, it's not only how you resist. It's like you don't become, and again, not to keep talking about Sicario, there's a line in there was like, no, we're the land of wolves now. Go move somewhere where the law and order still prevail. And it's like, well, no, Jesus sent us into the land of wolves, but he said, be wise and gentle. Wise as servants. Yeah. And it's like, and so Daredevil, like Matt recognized there's like, no, I can't be this persona of Daredevil for a while because it was allowing me to tap into the darkness, and the darkness was starting to overcome me. And I needed to go the other way around. And I think why he's wearing the mask now is not fully fleshed out. Was like, well, Matt, you just admitted why. Why are you now being? Yeah,
that's
Daredevil
the point.
Again,
they wouldn't land that plane.
They can't land the plane. They can't land the plane with it.
Which, by the way, we'll get to. My next point is in terms of, I think Christians have a reason, an answer to be able to land that plane, but he doesn't seem to. But I like what James was talking about a little bit before, is the exile is a huge portion of the Bible. Daniel in Babylon, or Jeremiah 29. Everybody remembers the Jeremiah 29:11. I know the plans I have for you. But that whole context is you are in Babylon. So what I don't want you to do is start rebellions and burn Babylon down. And I don't want you to become Babylonians. So when Fisk has turned the city to where everybody's doing what is right in their own eyes, what I want you to do is seek the good of the city. Make families, plant gardens, and be the city within the city. And so this show demonstrates the need for that in a broken world, but it just seems like you're missing the God-shaped hole in here. Which I have, and I think, you got some deep motivations, which I think, and unless you guys want to talk more about that specific point, bleeds well into what I thought was an important theme that ran through the whole season, even though the season was disjointed, is just, why does Matt do what he does? So in episode 9, you have Frank looking at Matt and saying, "Hey, Red, can I ask you a question? Why would you take a bullet for that enemy, for that for that a-hole. And I'm thinking, boy, this is an excellent time to have a discussion about your faith and everything. But Daredevil, in the same way that he just said "F it" when he put on his mask, he in this scene he just sighs, kind of like, "That's a good question." I'm not sure the writers have a good answer to this question besides "be good," But well, how about that? I know how a Christian would answer this. How do you think? What answer do you think the showrunners or Matt in the scene has in his head for why he's doing it? Do you have an idea, or is it just
no? Because like
what?
Why is Matt
like season 1 through 3? Daredevil, Matt, I think would have an answer, but I don't think this Matt would have an answer like why he would do it. Like the previous episode when he got shot, James and I talked about this. Like we talked about what to do. Like we postulate a whole bunch of reasons why, and then that's why this is so disappointing. Is when the show then doesn't try to explain this. Like you could explain it from a Catholic perspective. You could even explain it from a humanistic perspective.
Well, and they didn't even lean in.
They don't even try.
They didn't even lean into previous episodes, right?
Yeah.
Because we had another character on a stand talking about why he did things.
It's the right thing to do. Yeah, I was gonna. You know what? You're already getting there because that was an episode that had no Daredevil in it. I was disappointed with it, but it left the most lasting effect on me because of that. The right thing to do. Not a good
White Tiger.
Not a good court defense from Hector Ayala, as Eric pointed out. It's not a good.
And he says
defense.
it 10 times.
And it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. Which
what a great callback it would have been since he was haunted by Hector Ayala in the moment in episode 9. To have Frank ask him that, and then have because they flashed to Hector in some scenes in the episode too. Have him flash to him on the stand, and then have him say it was the right thing to do.
Yes, and you do the theme music.
Good writing.
Go, and then Frank goes, that's such a bunch of bull or something like that, and then Matt goes grenade and tackles him out the window, but then they keep going because they're going to save the city. Yes, do it, but. No, I don't know. It's so frustrating because they set up this great moment to be able to have him say something, and then you could have had Karen give him a speech that was like, Matt, I know that you stumble and fall and you could lose yourself to the darkness, but in the right moments, I trust that you will do the right thing. Cue another flashback to Hector Ayala, the good man who died. Who was killed by the city and by Fisk. Now we're going to rise up as a group and we're going to do the right thing. Yeah. And then Richard, our OG podcast host, can be like, well, by what standard is there the good thing? And we can have a fun time talking about the moral argument for God, that your conscience that cries out for the right thing to do is found all throughout, especially superhero shows. And that's why they're redeemable, not just silly.
And to have the allegedly Christian / Catholic Matt Murdock look at Frank and be like because your conscience is seared, Frank.
Yeah,
I mean, so many great interchanges that could have been had there to talk about.
And I wish they would just ask. I'll be a consultant, right? You just take my call. But
I said this about when I got out of the theater watching Captain America 4, is when I was talking with my friends, we were talking about all the plot holes and the different stuff, and I said we just talked about this for 5 minutes and we came up with a better story than they did. I was like, they just need to turn everything over to the fans. Like we need to crowdsource scripts now, apparently.
Yeah.
But it's so this is a good example of how the show brought up ideas, started to play with them, but didn't really land the plane. But if Frank asked a solid Christian, hey, Red, why would you take a bullet for your enemy, for this a-hole? Well, a Christian could say two things. Jesus commanded it, and Jesus modeled it. Jesus commanded it in Matthew 5. He said, you have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. Like, you don't think a priest could have worked that into a conversation at some point?
Or Matt could have worked it in, since he talked about how he still prays a couple episodes earlier.
Yep.
Or a crucifix, right? Red, why would you take a bullet for that a-hole? It would be a little too on the nose to say, well, I know somebody who
You took 4 nails.
Took
from
4
me,
nails,
or
from me,
3
3 nails. Yeah, took some nails from me, but you could have had a crucifix in the background, right? Or something. And then this was a verse that you brought up last episode, I think, Eric. I was just a fan of that one. Romans 5, verses 7 and 8 says this: "For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would dare even to die. But God showed his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." So this, as much as this episode doesn't land the plane, it leaves this gaping hole in which a Christian can answer, why would somebody dive in front of a bullet for their enemy? Because of Jesus, because of his command and his example, because God demonstrated his love for me that way. And so if I have the opportunity to love an enemy in a similar way, I might take it in order to. Jesus loved his disciples and said, you go and do likewise. I'm trying to do likewise.
You wouldn't even have to have it be on the nose or heavy-handed. I mean, we know Matt's been raised Catholic, so he has all these verses and ideas loaded in his head. You could have had him like, "Why'd you do that, Red?" And he could have he's like, "That's a good question," and he could have just muttered like, "God shows his love for us, and while we're still sinners, Christ died for us." And then Frank could have been like, "Oh, did I throw your religion in here?" Like,
that's just a crutch. That's just a crutch, Red. You need to put him on.
Right, so you could have buried. You could also have buried the lead and had it not be an impassioned argument, but even just a muttered statement and then thrown off. But still, you're getting out that like this man's wrestling with, or even at least the fragments of his faith.
What is the speech in the first scene when they're in the diner and he says, I believe that light could come and change somebody. I believe in mercy, grace, redemption, but I also believe in
retribution. Yeah. See, episode 1.
And so I was like that. The one thing is episode 1 did tie in to episode 9 pretty well, because you had Karen back, you had the story of investigating what Foggy was up to, and you had this interaction with Fisk and Matt, and so you could tell they were trying to dovetail there. But honestly, at this point, I was just not that interested in why Matt was putting the mask back on, and they thought that was going to be some kind of big reveal, but they wouldn't answer the question throughout the series. They didn't even answer it in episode 9.
Nope.
And that's so frustrating, because what we look at these stories for is, why would somebody dive in front of a bullet for their enemy? Tell me that story and help me become that kind of person. You will take my money, Disney. Tell me that story over and over again. Make me feel it. Make me feel that primal scream he does in season 2 when he's fought those ninjas and he goes, ah! So I love this stuff, but it's amazing how they opened that question of why he would take a bullet and just didn't even give a real answer. Just that's a good question.
And that ends up being the frustrating part about these shows. A lot of times is, I think this is probably part of the frustrations why a lot of Christians don't even engage in the task of what we're doing with popcorn theology, is because Hollywood so oftentimes just misses it, that Christians stop seeing value in it. They're like, they get it so wrong so oftentimes that they don't see, they can't see the forest through the trees, and Christians are like, if they can't even tell a good story, I'm not going to waste my time trying to redeem their story. And
just go give me some of that Christian propaganda. I'll eat up that.
Exactly. What in some ways, like over time, you just get used to that, where you're just like, maybe I'll stop watching TV, altogether. I know some people that have started to do that just because they're like, it's not even the propaganda at the end of the day. It's just the lack of being able to land the plane with the story, or having. I mean, that would be an interesting story. It's like, why would you take a bullet for him? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, because Frank has a good point.
That's not someone. Yeah. Someone with that attitude. That is a good question. Doesn't jump in front of a bullet.
Right.
like his attitude and his actions didn't line up. And so I can see why a lot of Christians would get upset and go, I'm just done with Hollywood completely. And I'm not even watching movies anymore, just because they don't even know how to answer their own questions that they make. Yeah. So let's move into our So, some a quick round of receive, reject, and redeem. So James, why don't you go ahead and get us started, brother?
Well, I think I have I'll call it a receive. I think because I think some of it's going to be contingent on where they go in season 2, and I think that the show is trying to communicate, because we're just talking about this, right? Not becoming like your enemies to overcome them.
Yeah.
Like that's, Matt still calls out Frank, no, almost like a dog with a rolled up newspaper at that moment. Like, Frank, no. And then Frank shoots the other guy. But Matt resists his temptations, at least so far. And likewise, the show has cops and others. The cops are willing to become like criminals and villains to achieve their goals. We find out Fisk isn't going legitimate. He's using evil means. Opportunities arise. The former police commissioner is holding on to his morals even to his death. And so the show seems to be saying that ends don't justify immoral means, which is absolutely a biblical concept.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering, I am cautious when I say, well, that's a receive, because the show's clearly standing there. I guess we'll have to see where season 2 and the resistance goes, right? Culturally, with some of the political commentary, this seems to be imitating. In the last decade, we've seen oppressed become oppressors. We've seen people who are protesting the perceived oligarchs become the rioters instead of, right. So they like Fisk causes some riots, but now are they going to cause riots in response? Right. I mean, and we've even seen people who are anti sort of the government they see as corrupt, advocating for murder. Yeah. So it's like, we'll see where Matt's and his resistance goes next season. And if stooping to the same behaviors somehow ultimately kind of becomes okay because they're on the side of the righteous. So I think it's a receive from season 1. I'm a little nervous, since it's so politically on the nose, where they'll go with, well, we're on the side of righteousness. So we're justified in some of our, we're justified in breaking the law. We're justified in overturning cars. We're justified in all the destruction and vandalism and things that are happening at the end of season 1 here, which it's like, well, let's not stoop to their level. Yeah. Will they, though? I guess so. Receive for now. Hopefully it stays that way.
I think another thing to receive from this show is, somebody could argue, Matt, you didn't kill Bullseye, but Matt knows that he thought he would by tossing him off that roof. I don't think we talked about this before. It's actually just kind of neat that a show is taking seriously that the intent of your heart, the murder in Matt's heart, he's counting it as murder, And so Jesus says in Matthew 5:21, you've heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder. Whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says you fool will be liable to the hell of fire. And then after this, Jesus talks about lust. If you look at a woman with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. So Matt actually does have at least for this one sin, a certain amount of conscience that's kind of Christian. Somebody could say, well, your effects, the effects of what you did, he didn't die. That's okay. He's in jail. It's where he's supposed to be. It turned out all right. But he's like, no, he wanted to kill him. So I think that's actually kind of refreshing. And in that one sense, you can receive it, unless you want to go with Eric and it's the self-defense. He was beaten.
Self-defense. Yeah. He was beaten and had him on the ropes. He could have easily thrown him down to the roof of the building at that point and not off the building at that point.
Yeah. So I think they did a pretty good job where he's wobbling and they got, but all of this actually does show that Matt's, the not killing rule, Batman has the not killing rule. Some other heroes have the not killing rule, but at least in Matt's, you could insert the biblical idea of the image of God that he respects. In season 2, you get a little bit of it, the glimmer of hope of something redeemable inside of them that you snuff out, Frank. He does have a sense of, at core, we are all corrupted by sin, but at core, there's something valuable in every human being because of the place that God has given them. And that is a neat thing to hold on to, whether the showrunners know it or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, that goes back to season 1. The episode 1 of this season, right? Where it's one of the best moments where Matt Murdock says, "I was raised to believe in grace, but I was also raised to believe in retribution," and that's a redeemable piece that we have, because we know that we are in general as Christians called to, as bless those who persecute us. Like there is a call on us to be sacrificial and sometimes even martyred for our faith. But we also do believe, well, one, we believe in like vengeance isn't ours, but it will come. Like there is, as you're talking about, when you picture this as a metaphor for the time of the judges and Daredevil are those being raised up like a judge, like God will raise up sometimes symbolic archetypes of Christ that are actually sent to bring some retributive justice. And sometimes he raises up world leaders and governments to do that in ways and government authorities to have officers of the law who bring justice. But we also know that ultimately that will be lived out in Jesus. And so we can enjoy a vengeance story. Like we can enjoy a vengeance story provided we see it as metaphor. Like we don't get to be the Punisher, but we can enjoy the Thomas Jane movie or The Crow or some of these other movies, John Wick, where it's like, oh, there is a righteous deliverer of vengeance that will come someday, and we sort of wait upon that glorious day. So if we see these as archetypes and not inspirations for us, that's a totally redeemable piece. Where it's like I believe in grace, but I also believe that retribution will be dispensed on that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, justice will come, and that's a craving justice is something that is about part of who you are and a good part of who you are. An interesting thing about this show, I don't exactly know whether to call it a receive or redeem category, but I think we can see that this show paints a pretty stark picture of how corruptible we are. I mean, you can picture Fisk as the devil, and the devil manipulates people to step out of God's will in mainly two ways. He intimidates you away from where you're supposed to be, and he entices you away from where you're supposed to be.
Well, the female advisor in episode 9 did surprise me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
That's like one piece I didn't see coming. And it almost felt like I don't feel like she played it like she would turn. But then again, Peter denied Jesus, right? You're thinking like,
yeah, you're not David, right? So it's one of those things where these folks that are around Fisk they're us, and 1 Peter 5 says this: be sober-minded and be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. And devour is not just destroy, but it's also corrupt, right? He intimidates us. He intimidated her. And we thought that she was one of the good ones. She wanted to be, but in the end, she was too scared. So many of those people around Fisk were too scared.
Yeah.
And then he also tempts people. That Daniel Blake, right? He doesn't really love Fisk, but he's just like this ambitious guy. He gave this speech about, I'm just going to kind of go with it and see how far this goes, right? And he loves the power. He's tasted it, and he's been devoured by giving into temptation. We see it in Genesis 3, Matthew 4, Genesis 4, all over the place, where the devil, in this case Fisk, will intimidate or entice people to sin. Yeah. And so it's really interesting is that Fisk is a devil figure in this series.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Dressed in white, dressed as like the angel of light.
Yeah,
right?
it's so great. That's 1 Corinthians 11, right?
When I was a boy. Oh, wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Miles, with your last one, why don't you talk about the most interesting part, I would say, of this entire series is how I think all three of us have kind of all had this weird admiration for the Fisk marriage.
Yeah, so Fisk is a really good picture of how Satan corrupts everything he touches and destroys and tempts us, but he's also almost the clearest picture of a Christian virtue in marriage that I've found in recent TV, which makes me feel very, very conflicted because the Fisk marriage is commendable. I didn't even want to take this point on my own because it's something that we've all talked about on and off the podcast, but you have Wilson's borderline idolatrous devotion to Vanessa, right? And then you have Vanessa's devotion to Wilson, and in a really interesting moments, like wife-like submission to his plan and his choices, even when she doesn't agree with him. That was a really interesting picture. And so, like Vanessa, even I think James talked about this. She kills the object of temptation. You know, Fisk said, "You need to kill your flesh, kill Adam," which means man, by the way, in Hebrew. Yeah. You need to kill Adam in order to be with me, and she does. Innocent guy. And so it actually reminded me in this very perverse way. Jesus says this: "If your eye causes you to sin, cut it out." And so they're, at least in their devotion to one another, it's this strange redeem picture that I feel guilty about saying each week. But that is some wonderful TV right there to make you feel conflicted as the picture is compelling in these ways. Now, of course, this doesn't mean it's what you were talking about, James, as kind of an archetype. It's really interesting. But of course, I wouldn't recommend if you fall into adultery, killing your lover in order to show your devotion as you return to your spouse.
Well, and also it's also not justice at the end of the day, because the law of God says the man and the woman should die. And so only eliminating your adulterous lover, but keeping yourself staying, is like, well, that's actually not justice. That's the whole point of the woman caught in adultery affair, is that they weren't doing justice at the end of the day.
Yeah. So very fun. Good job, Daredevil Born Again season. Ended at kind of a positive, even with this last episode and the disjointedness leaving a bad taste.
Having dinner together after walking through the row of cages of all the people.
Yeah. You want a Jim and Pam kind of relationship. I want a Wilson and Vanessa relationship. Hashtag. You know, like all that.
That's great. All right, so the credits are about to roll on this episode, so keep engaging movies and media from a godly perspective, and remember, you are not a mindless consumer.
Thanks for watching this episode of Popcorn Theology. For more content, subscribe on YouTube. Follow and interact on social media to help broaden the conversation. Check out our archive of past episodes at popcorntheology.com or wherever you listen to podcasts, and consider becoming a patron saint by supporting us on Patreon, which lets you interact, influence, and enjoy exclusive bonus content.